the last podcast that we did, it started off with, okay, I'm recording. And then you were like,
Was I like 80-12?
yes.
Yeah. I didn't even just listen to that part of the podcast.
Did
I just
you
remember
not?
that's like the only part I remember of the podcast was me being like, for the tape. Do you know,
Yeah.
the pressure I feel right now is that, you know, when a singer comes out with an album and then their second album isn't as good. I'm worrying about the expectations then. I'm thinking I really need to like Adele this and just get better and better, you know?
I think you might be overthinking this. This is a podcast, but sure.
I know.
Ah. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the 21 and Sensory podcast with me, Emily. On today's show, I have a very special guest who we last heard from in episode 35, and it is my sister.
Hello, everyone.
And yeah, so this actually is going to be episode 80, like
Wow.
80. I know, right? And you were first, when I say first on, that was the only time you were on, but you were on episode 35.
Wow, look at how far we've come.
I know, that was a long time ago. I know. Tell me about it. So the last time, it feels weird saying the last time we spoke to you, I speak to you more regularly than just via this podcast.
Podcast 35, yeah.
Yeah.
Last time I spoke to you, podcast 35.
That was April 2021, and I've definitely spoken to you since then. I'm not just checking in now. I thought it'd be nice to have you back on because obviously it's been a while, but I feel like it'd be interesting to hear about your career. And you'd already graduated, hadn't you?
Yeah, I think I had my degree in primary education.
Yeah. And then you were working at a local kind of mainstream primary school to where you were living at the time.
Yeah, that was my first job.
Yeah. So things have changed since then. So that was 2021. And I think we last spoke to you you were talking about like the pandemic and like teaching online and stuff and how like weird that was.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe we could start from like picking up from where we left off, kind of.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So how long were you at that school and what made you move on?
Yeah, so I think I was at that primary school for 3 years. So I taught Key Stage 1, so that's quite young children. So age 5 and 6. And I did a couple of years in year 1, and then I did year 2, getting them ready for their SATs. And it was a perfect first job into teaching. I loved my class, and it was a really good experience. I loved it. And I think also as we did that podcast after then, I also decided that I wanted to start studying a part-time master's. So as it's part-time alongside teaching, I'd do it in the evenings once a week, and it would be 3 years long, which at the time felt like such a long time. But 3 years later, I've just finished, which is very exciting. So if I talk about the job and then I'll maybe talk about the masters afterwards. So I did mainstream primary school for 3 years, and then kind of felt that in my class I had a lot of children with lots of additional needs that the school just couldn't cater for. And I just kind of felt it wasn't really a school that I felt very aligned with anymore, and I kind of wanted to do more to help the children with special educational needs. And so I kind of started to look around at different avenues, looking at kind of schools for children with autism, or different provisions, and ended up going into a provision for children with extreme trauma. I've spent the last year and a half working in a school for children with trauma, and it was quite a tough job. It was very extreme behaviours, but what kind of drew me to the job was it's very child-centred, so children's mental health first, lessons second. If your child's having a bad day, stop the lesson, play a game, kind of get back down on their level and kind of get that smile back on their face, like the lesson comes after that. And I really liked that about the job. And kind of looking back at mainstream now, I'm not sure I'd go back into a mainstream school just because I think I might have spoken about in the last podcast, it's just very data driven. So very kind of exam results, are you ticking this box? Are you ticking that box? And it just wasn't the part of the job I enjoyed anymore. I really didn't like that. I just loved the teaching part, and the teaching I was finding harder to do with all the expectations. And yeah, there's a lot of teachers leaving at the moment, so I see why.
Do you think when you were working in the mainstream school,
Yeah.
did you think your next job wouldn't be in mainstream? Like, were you put off from being in mainstream, or is it now when you look back, you're like, wasn't for me?
I think I always knew going into my education course that I wanted to work with children with more special educational needs as opposed to kind of mainstream children. And I'm so glad I started off there, but it was also by the end of it, it just really showed me that that wasn't the job for me. That wasn't why I went into teaching. I didn't go to teach a class full of children and ask them to sit down and cross their legs all day and now go and sit at your desk and do this piece of writing for an hour. I just felt like I really wanted to help those children. I really enjoyed helping the children in my class that needed kind of different ways of learning, different ways of me teaching them. So yeah, it just felt natural that I would switch it up and find a different provision to join after the mainstream school.
And did you feel like when you were in that mainstream school, like did you feel like you had to start your career in a mainstream school in order to then kind of specialize?
Absolutely. I think something that I've written about in my dissertation for my master's is there's just no such limited training for teachers to become special needs teachers. I think on my university course we had one lecture, so what, like 1 hour and 3 full-time years of the course on how to teach children with additional needs. And you could try and get a placement in a school, in a special educational needs school, but it was really kind of rare that you'd be able to get that placement. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's awful that there's no like no specific thing you can go out and get unless you go on your own accord. You pay for a course yourself. And so I think everyone's first school is mainstream. And the other thing is, a lot of special needs schools, rightfully so, are saying you need experience before you start. But my problem was, how do I get that experience? I can't get that experience. And a lot of people were saying to me, well, like, try and volunteer with children with special needs. And I was like, I'm a full-time teacher. Like, when do you think I can volunteer? Because I could volunteer in like the holidays and things, but like that was the only break I was getting. And so yeah, the only option really was to go into mainstream school. But I think, yeah, they don't do enough to help teachers get into a special educational needs school.
And was that 1 hour that you said, was that on your like degree course, or was that on your master's?
Yeah, that was on my first degree course, my primary education course. That was all teachers learning to all students learning to become teachers had 1 hour of training. And I mean, when I went to primary school, I think there was one child in a class of 60 with kind of a diagnosed special educational need. Whereas now you've got maybe 3, 4, 5 children with additional needs in your class, alongside other things like children having English as an additional language. Or yeah, so I think that is something that should change, you know.
Also, that was something you not came up against, but you had to adapt to a lot, wasn't it? Was English as a second or additional like language, and learning how to communicate with children that had just arrived in the UK. Like, must be really scary for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was something I had no training on whatsoever. I really wasn't prepared. And I had one child join me in my first year of teaching. He was a gorgeous child, and he'd just come from China and he didn't know a word of English. And he came into the class, and like, it's just baffling. He just came and sat in the class. He does not know what a single person around him is saying. He'd also never attended school today, and he was really tearful. No wonder, bless him. Like, he'd just come, and his mum had also knitted him his school jumper. It was so sweet. But actually, I did find that he had we did like a cutting out activity in the day, and he was amazing at it. Like, his fine motor skills, all the things that like he did know how to do, he was amazing at. But yeah, I can't imagine going and sitting. I'm 5 years old and going sitting on a carpet with 30 other children and an adult at the front of the room, and I don't understand a word they're saying. But yeah, like, as a teacher, I also didn't know this child was just brought in, and I was like, I'm not sure how to communicate. You think I used a lot of visuals and hand gestures and a lot of modelling and things. But that was all, I just had to crack on and do that myself and kind of be like, I don't know if this is the right way to do it.
Yeah, because also you've got like, I don't know, 29 other children to, you know, your focus can't just be on him or just be on a child that has some additional needs. Like, you've got to try and balance it between that many small people.
Yeah, and to be fair, you made such amazing progress. And I remember his mum coming to me at the end of the year and saying like how many friends he'd made and how amazing his English had been because he'd been kind of so swamped in it. I do have that one funny story of that I had a girl that joined me in my like last year in that school, and she'd come from Syria, I think, and she didn't speak a word of English. Again, similar, didn't know what was going on in school, and she'd pick up phrases that the children would say. So if the children said "How are you," she'd just repeat back "How are you," and that was a lot of the way she learnt language, was kind of repeating things she'd heard friends say. And it was a few months in that her English had really kind of taken off. She came up to me, and she was holding her water bottle, and she just went "water bottle," and I was like, "Oh no!" Like, she has learnt from all these children. At the time, I was working in a South London school, and all the children would be like, "Oh, I'm going to go fill up my water bottle. Has anyone seen my water bottle?" And I just couldn't believe that this gorgeous child, like learning the English language, was there like, "Water bottle?" And I was like, "No, it's water bottle. What are we doing to you?
What have we done?" Oh, bless her.
Bless. Yeah. But yeah, that was definitely a
But it does
challenge that I
show
wasn't prepared
you,
for.
it shows you how like quickly they pick up on like
Key
words
phrases
and
even, yeah.
phrases. Yeah. And I kind of feel like that's why if you're little, like you like
You're a
learn
sponge,
a
aren't you?
second, yeah, you learn a second language that much, not easier, but I guess just maybe quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the most kind of pivotal stage in your life, isn't it? It's the point when you can pick up, you can like learn the most, isn't it? Which is why it's a good time.
Yeah.
Started there, but it is a bit throwing them in at the deep end, isn't it? Just saying.
It really is. Because if you were to say, like, we went somewhere else as children and you just, they just seem to adapt so quickly, bless them.
They do. We had a staff meeting once and it was on kind of on languages, and the Spanish teacher started the meeting by just speaking in Spanish, and she'd come up to us and she'd ask us questions in Spanish and be like really like insistent, and we were all just there like, I don't know what I don't know what she's saying to anyone. And it was just like, the idea was just to give you kind of like a little aspect of what it feels like to be those children sat in classes. And it was like really like, oh God, I don't know what she's saying. And yeah, anyway, yeah.
So interesting. And so what kind of made you decide to potentially start looking and move on from a mainstream? And then I guess also that kind of relates in with you going on to study further as well.
Yeah, so I think I'd kind of got to the point where it served its purpose. I'd kind of done the Key Stage 1. I knew that I didn't want to I didn't want to teach the older children, and I'd done Key Stage 1 for 3 years, so I was just going to keep going over what I'd previously done, and I was getting more children with additional needs, and I couldn't help them in the ways that I really wanted to, and I also didn't have the time to help them. Like, all the expectations of the mainstream school meant I didn't have the time to like make the resources and things I really wanted to. So I started kind of having a look around at different jobs and knew I wanted to work with children with additional needs. And at the time, I think my lecturer from my undergrad reached out and said, would you be interested in a master's? Which at the time I finished my primary education degree, they said you couldn't do a master's for a few years after you got into teaching because you kind of had to get some experience first. So I had never really thought of it because I didn't think it was a possibility, but looked into it over lockdown, which was a little bit of a foolish idea because I had so much time on my hands then. A little bit back into a school, I didn't have much time. So yeah, looked at different. I did want to do a master's in just special educational needs, but speaking to my lecturer, she was kind of like, why don't you get a wider perspective? And so I did a master's in the end that covered special educational needs, children with English as an additional language, which was so helpful, and also leadership and management because it gives me lots of options for the future with that master's. So that's what I went into, and yeah, I did over 3 years part-time in the evenings and did lots of different essays. So I did like assignments on children with ADHD, how the school system just does not serve children with ADHD, how we ask children to come in, line up, sit down, be quiet. Honestly baffling, isn't it? They're children. What else did I do assignments on? Children with additional languages in the classroom, children with sensory processing disorder, autism in the classroom. It was so interesting, and listening to lots of different lecturers was extremely helpful. It was quite hard to do alongside the job.
So at what point did you change jobs? It was during your masters, or was it before your masters? I can't remember.
Was during my masters. Was it 1 year in or 2 years in? I think it was 2 years in, because I had to, 2 years into my masters. I changed my job for my final year in September,
Okay.
and did my dissertation in the school,
Mm-hmm.
in the new school. So yeah, it was kind of a good segue, and I'd kind of had a couple of years under my belt learning about different needs before I went into this school. And that was another scary thing, was that I did have to go into this special needs school for children with trauma with no experience of working with children like that before.
And do you wish that you had, I guess you couldn't get the experience, but do you wish you had been at least taught the theory?
Absolutely. I think as alongside special educational needs is social, emotional, mental health needs, and we didn't learn about that at all. And I don't know if that's something that's maybe changed. I did only do my course 5 years ago, I think, but I didn't learn about children's social, emotional, mental health needs, and that is such a massive thing that all children have, and how like their mental health impacts their behaviour and things. Like, knowing what I know now from this school makes me think back to some children I've had, and it kind of like puts pieces of the puzzle back together a little bit there. And I kind of wish I'd had the experience. And a lot of teachers that I see come to interview for the job, or take the job and stay for a couple of weeks and then go, you just think, oh, if you'd had the experience, if you knew what it was like here, you either wouldn't have taken the job, or you'd have been better equipped to have kind of gone into the job, So I think it's kind of setting people up to fail a little bit of the time.
It's interesting what you say about mental health as well, because obviously they're it's quite comorbid conditions, isn't it, in terms of, autism can go hand in hand with mental health issues, or, certain trauma and things. Like, there's so much overlap between mental health and these kind of diagnoses that you think that they would be covered a bit better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that was something we weren't taught. It was kind of like, oh, you might have children in your class with autism. Like, that is the one additional need that you might come across. You might have a child with dyslexia. It was never like you might have a child with a whole host of things. You might have a child where you kind of need to get to the bottom of what's going on there, kind of thing, But
also,
yeah.
didn't you have to, like, I don't know if this was in your original, like, mainstream school, like, you said you had to fill out, like, information for, like, support for a diagnosis, which you had never done before?
No, yeah, I had to fill out lots of forms where children were getting diagnoses for ADHD, and that teacher form was so long, and it was so in depth about their behaviours and things, and you're kind of thinking, I really do know this child, but I do have 29 other children, and I'm trying to fill in like everything, and it's asking for comments, how do they do this, and I'm more than happy to do that, but I didn't have any training. Like, at the time, I think when I graduated I was 21.
Yeah.
And I was like this 21-year-old girl, like, filling out diagnosis forms for different children.
And I know, obviously, you spent all day, every day with these children, so you probably, you were a good person to ask, and you had the background training. But you're right, you were just kind of doing your best.
Yeah, thrown in the deep end a little bit there.
Yeah.
It's a good experience, but it just seems like the only way you can get experience is by just being given it and not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah. Which, when it comes to children, is a bit worrying, I think.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
of all the kind of safeguarding stuff. I guess it'd be good to talk a bit more about the kind of shift from mainstream to a more specialist setting. And I guess also maybe you could discuss the kind of how it became kind of more of a physical job rather than just, like, the job became more physical in itself.
Yeah.
You'll explain it better than I've said it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So I think I was looking around for jobs in special educational needs settings, and this one job came up to work in a school for children with trauma, and I kind of inquired and said, like, could I even work here? I don't have any experience. And they were like, come in, spend a day here, we'll do the interview, see how it goes. And I went in, and it was a very small school, and it didn't have many children in it at the time. And it was a chaotic day. There were children like running around screaming. And I was also told when I went into the interview, they said to me, like, this is what your day is going to be like. You are going to have children with extreme behavior. You could have your hair pulled, you could be pushed, someone could punch you. These children have got such awful trauma in their lives. Their only way to react, because they're so young, it was a primary school still, their only way to react is with violence. So, like, just be prepared that this could be any kind of day. You are free to go now. You can leave right now if you want. And I was so like, well, what the hell?
Wow. If
I was
that's
like,
not a
oh,
warning, like.
yeah, I was like, I'll see how I go. And I did like my lesson, and there were a
But
few
well
little
done you for
blips.
hanging on in there.
I
Like,
do kind of think sometimes, is that why I took the job? Because I was so like, no, I'll keep going. Thank you very much.
yeah, this is a challenge.
Yeah. And there were like a few funny moments in my interview lesson, and children were kind of trying to throw things, and I just kind of kept back to my teaching ways of like humor, and it went really well. And I spent the day there, and I loved the fact it was so child-centered. It was very like, do you know what, your lesson's finished a bit early, that's fine, play some games, do some relationship building with them.
Mhm.
And they did lots of trips. Lessons were really short, they were only kind of 30-40 minutes long, so that you had their attention and you didn't overwhelm them. There were lots of breaks. You played lots of games with them during the playtimes and things, and I loved that. So I think that's kind of why I went into it. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to help children first. As much as I'm a teacher, I want to help the children first, and then the lessons, the learning, the teaching comes second. Like, I really just love the fact it was so child first, child centered learning. So yeah, I started and had a class of initially 3 children, which then went up. And yeah, I think you also get taught restraint training, which is quite I guess it could be seen as controversial, because nobody wants to kind of, as you say, like, put your hands on children. However, the only reason we were trained in de-escalation techniques for behavior, but at the end of the day, these children can be really violent, and they can hurt each other really badly. They can hurt you, the teachers. So we were trained in ways to hold children, just to remove them from like kind of unsafe environments, and kind of help them calm down.
Also,
And
it
so
was
yeah,
kind of like your arms like crossed or locked between like you and a colleague or something. Like, it wasn't,
yeah,
when you said like hands on, you were almost trying not to use your hands and trying to,
oh,
kind of
absolutely, yeah.
lock them in place. Is that right?
Yeah, and we had like a 2-day training on the restraints, and how there's so many different holds that are not used. We do not use anything that like covers their chest, takes them to the ground, anything like that. Which when you say kind of restraints, you kind of think, oh my goodness, like you're gonna hold this child against the wall. That's not what it is at all. It's kind of more of a like a looping of arms, just to keep them safe and just give them a space to calm down. Because if you just let a child keep going, they just become more disruptive, and it just becomes a part of them that they think, well, when I'm angry, I do this, I flip all the tables and I go and punch all the children. You're just kind of taking them away from that crazy space and giving them a space to just calm, reflect, and kind of get to the bottom of what caused that behaviour.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, as more time went on, there was more experience of some really extreme behaviours, and there'd be days when it really wasn't safe because other things would be going on. Maybe teachers were leaving, or you'd be going on a school trip and the children would be nervous. And you were dealing kind of with a class full of children with trauma alongside children who also, on top of their trauma or alongside their trauma, have autism. I had a couple of children with ADHD, and it was a class full of children with so many needs, but so different. And it was hard to cater to all of them, and each other could set each other off, and you didn't kind of know when the behavior might happen sometimes. So yeah, it was such an amazing experience. I've learnt so much from it, but it was very, very physical, and I would come home very, very tired. But I feel like, especially when I started with the class that I had, we were making like really good kind of progress with them, and we did something called emotion coaching. So you kind of come down to the child's level and try and understand. Oh, I wonder if you're feeling angry because you don't like doing maths and things, and you'd actually start to see the children use that language. They go up to each other and they'd say, "Oh, I wonder if you don't want to do this lesson because you feel angry about what just happened when you were playing football." I get that that's really, really frustrating that you lost then. I wonder if that's why you're feeling angry. And like to see children using language like that, especially with such awful trauma, and you think, oh, maybe they're going home and using that. Yeah, like that was kind of the rewarding side of the job. But yeah, it was very physical, very tiring. And I'm not too
also,
sure any teacher could do it for too long.
yeah, sounds like it. And like also remember you being like, it's really important to like build a relationship with them and get on the same level with them, which I think for you was maybe easier than other teachers because you were younger and they kind of saw you as younger and more of a friend as well as a teacher kind of thing. But also like it'd be interesting to discuss the kind of attachment that they get to you, which makes, leaving hard or you not being in one day hard. Like there's almost two extremes of you're trying to get a good relationship with them and then you've got it and actually they're having attachment kind of struggles.
Yeah, and I do think the relationships you have with children are what's key to succeeding in the job. So I think I was on quite a good level with most of the children there. I feel like I have good humor with children, and like there was even one girl that loved doing like TikTok dances, and we'd learn them together, kind of thing. So I felt like on a good level with children. But yeah, like you say, I think with trauma comes some like attachment trauma, and you're kind of there as a trusted adult. You're someone that child can talk to. You're someone that child can go to for a hug. You can go, like I even had children kind of sitting on my laps on days when they were having a hard day, which in a mainstream school you don't do. Whereas in this school, they need to know what a caring and like trustworthy relationship is, and they need to know how valued they are, because for some of them it might not be their case at home, for some of them it is. um, and so yeah, every day you're that person they see every day. Oh, she's always going to be there. If I'm having a bad day, I can go and speak to her, I can go and have a hug from her. She's my favorite teacher, she really gets me, she would always listen to me. But then if I was ever off sick, it was really hard because I'd feel really guilty, like I've got children counting on me, and that child's going to be so upset when they realize I'm not there tomorrow. And similarly, the children could have really awful days because if you weren't there, because it's just out of the ordinary a little bit, that person that I'm counting on is not here. It was really tricky because you're kind of teaching them a little bit the fundamentals of life that they might not have already learned, like the fundamentals children in mainstream schools might or might not already have. And so yeah, it does make it hard as well when teachers want to leave jobs, because it is quite a tough environment to work in. So it's no wonder teachers might want to leave it for that reason. Um, but then also you've been a constant in a child's life, and then it's hard for that child not to think you're going because of me, or they see it's been a really hard term, kind of behaviour wise, and they're thinking, "Oh, have you gone because school's been really, really hard at the moment? Is it our fault? Whose fault is it?" Um, if you really loved us, if you really liked us, you wouldn't go. And that was really hard, I think, to making the choice to leave, because it definitely wasn't because of the children at all why I left the job. I think I just come to the end of my line with that way of working and was ready for a new kind of adventure. But yeah, definitely the attachment is quite hard for children with trauma. So I just think, like, maybe if the people that listen ever come into contact with children, they're not used to it, or they think they're not sure how to kind of like approach, like, yeah, I don't know, just one thing that was like I really, really taken to other jobs was like learning the pace technique of playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And just kind of, I just didn't realize at all like how many children kind of go into a rage, and actually how you can bring them out of that rage by being playful. Like there'd be times when children would like grab my arms or grab my wrists or something like that in like an anger, and I'd like turn it into a cha-cha-cha dance, and they just like laugh, and you just kind of like bring them out of it by being playful.
Okay.
Or being like, are you getting angry because it's not chocolate cake for lunch today? Are you getting angry? Because, mate, I feel a bit angry about that too. Like, just lightening the mood a little bit. So I think
Okay.
like being playful and being curious. I wonder, you seem really quiet today. I wonder if you're feeling tired perhaps, or I wonder if maybe something's going on before you came into school this morning. But I just want you to know I'm always here if you want to chat, kind of like just coming down to the level. And
You're like replacing the mood almost.
yeah, and kind of just like modeling their maybe like how they should like frame their mind, kind of thing. Like, oh, I'm really sorry you got hurt in that football match. That I feel really sad that you're upset and crying, but like, let me know if there's anything I can do. I imagine you're feeling quite upset right now, so I'll just give you some space, but you let me know if you need anything. Just like really kind of understanding them and just coming down to their level. I just think I learned so much from that. It just changed the way I taught, and I just wouldn't teach without that anymore. I think just being really,
Mm-hmm. And I
yeah,
guess almost
understanding.
it's like you're kind of guiding them, especially if it's hard for them to label their feelings, to guide them and be like, I think this could be, it might not be how you're feeling, but could I be on the right tracks with thinking, you're upset because of this? Like,
Yeah.
maybe it helps them later down the line to recognize that again, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was good like to model to other children. So you'd kind of say, like, if children were annoying each other, you'd say, I wonder if they'd like a little bit of space right now, because by their face, they're looking quite frustrated. So I wonder if let's give them some space. And it was kind of just like, yeah, modeling to those children, like, oh, I didn't think about how his face looked. His face was angry. Maybe I should leave him alone, kind of thing. It just, yeah, you really were kind of developing the fundamentals a bit.
Mm-hmm. And how did you find it when like the class size doubled, or I think it more than doubled, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It did more than double. I think because there are so many children with trauma, and they're kind of more children are getting diagnosed now more than ever with different educational needs. So the class size did increase, but the teacher ratio stayed the same. That was really tricky because, like I said previously, like you've got children with lots of different needs, needing lots of different things. And on a smaller ratio, you could really, really take the time to sit with each child and give them such quality time every day, and really kind of dig into things that you think, oh, do you know what, that child hasn't seen themselves today. Whereas when you've got a bigger class, and in each class you do kind of have children who are more challenging, let's say. And so sometimes they can take up a lot of your time, because not because they need more attention or anything, but just the safety aspect. I found that I was often dealing with children with really unsafe behaviours in order to keep the children safe and the teachers safe, but it then meant that I couldn't attend to the rest of the class members, and I'd have like another teacher with them, but with maybe 7 or 8 in a class, it's so hard to give them that really specialised teaching experience and to really listen to each of their needs when you've got 8 children in the mainstream school would be something, but like 8 children with EHCPs, educational healthcare plans, in one room, requiring such different learning styles, such different teaching styles. Like, yeah, it just became a lot more challenging because we had a lot of children in the end. And I think if the class sizes had stayed smaller, I'd have felt like it was a more beneficial. I think I could have stayed, but I think, yeah, with class sizes increasing, it was becoming more unsafe, and the school was just changing in other ways that just wasn't, again, the way I aligned with anymore. And I think I wasn't doing as much good as I was when I first came, because I was just felt like I was putting fires out, and I wasn't teaching at all. I was just trying to keep children safe and teachers safe, and that wasn't the school I joined. It was a very challenging setting, and I guess there's different ways to getting it right, but yeah, I think that I learned a lot. And yeah, that served me for what it did, and then onto another adventure, I think.
And looking back now, having done a master's and having done your degree, and obviously having been mainstream and having been in a more specialist setting, if you could start again, so you've just come out of your A levels, would you do the same thing?
I think
having the kind of hindsight that you have now, maybe.
It's tricky. I think to become a teacher, I definitely would have done primary education again, because the only other option to become a teacher is such a short course of a PGCE or something like Teach First, where you're teaching on the job and going to uni like once a week kind of thing. And I don't think that equips you enough to be it does equip you to be a teacher, but I think from a 3-year course, you can't really compare the knowledge that you gain. Like I did gain a lot of knowledge in primary education, just not for children with additional needs. I think perhaps I'd have tried to have got a placement in an additional needs school. I guess experience is really good, but I don't know when I'd have found the time, because like I said in the last podcast, I had my heart condition pretty bad at university. So I'm not sure if I'd have been able to do much more experience than kind of what I was doing. Yeah, I don't know.
I put you on the spot. I do realise
You did. I'm kind of thrown a little bit. I'm kind of, because I think I haven't found like the dream thing I want to go into yet. There's things that have piqued my interest. I wanted to be a Key Stage 1 teacher. I wanted to go and work in a different setting. I did that. I'd like to go and work in another different setting. But I don't think there's ever been anything where I'm like, I absolutely want to work in this. I think I would have loved some experience in an ASD base. That was what I really thought I wanted to go into. And I think I might have even said in the podcast last time, I really wanted to be a Senko at one point. And I'd always said that's what I wanted to do. Like after my master's, I wanted to become a Senko, but I think I've learned more and more recently. Senko's workloads are so high workload. They're also putting Senkos in jobs where they're Senko and teacher. And I think, mate, being a teacher isn't enough. What do you mean?
That's a lot.
Do another job on top. So yeah, and also it's a lot of paperwork and less children-y, and I love working with children. So I think Senko's on hold for a little bit, I think, because I literally want to play it in the playground at lunchtime, and I don't think I can do that as a Senko.
Can you not? I'm thinking Mr. Poppy in the Nativity.
Oh, fully like hood on my coat, my arms are not in it. I'm absolutely helicoptering around the playground. And I take games seriously, you know. Miss one it again at lunchtime. Yeah, I did. I play serious, guys, you know.
I play to win.
Yeah. Honestly, if you're going to become a teacher, I honestly don't recommend starting that, because you can never stop. I used to do races at playtime. I used to race the kids, and then every playtime would be like, come race us. I want to go and have a tea break. That's quite a hard standard to keep up.
Yeah, I bet. But I remember you being like so excited to go on the trips and stuff to like, you know, like the cool playground, and being able to just kind of be a kid with the kids.
Yeah, and I think they need that. They need like playful adults, like adults that have the boundary, like, you know, when it's enough, I can't cross that line with her, but also like, Miss is gonna love this joke kind of thing. And I think one thing, when I said I wasn't sure about having like a dream job in a alternate universe,
here we go,
I would have my dream school, and my dream school would take children who mainstream schools do not suit their learning styles. I'd have relatively small class sizes, as much as I could, and it would be very like arts, creative, sensory based learning. You know, the lessons are interactive, they're visual. We're not writing in books, we are maybe taking pictures of what the children are doing. Very child-centered, child mental health first, a bit like that last school. I'd take bits from all the different schools, you know, but I'd make it very, just not like core subject led. So many schools are so like, gotta focus on the English, gotta focus on the maths. And yeah, that's great, but I was okay at English, I was okay at maths, and I've gone down the same path I was gonna do if I was amazing at it, or probably awful at it. I just needed like a C in English and maths to become a primary school teacher. So
yeah, we talked about that last time, didn't we? Like the sheer amount of GCSEs you have, most people have compared to what you did, which was absolutely fine, which was just 5.
Just 5.
Yeah.
Even seeing things like there's something called forest schools where children go and,
I hear a lot about those.
Oh, it's just so child-led learning. Like they just lead, like, oh, I want to go and bake a mud pie. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go and hunt for ladybirds. Like, I love that. I'm going to follow you. Where are we going after this? Like,
yeah,
that's just, that will teach children so much to be a leader at 5 and to be exploring things rather than sat in a classroom doing maths. I'm not saying they're not important subjects, they absolutely are, but I think for some children, like if maths doesn't go in your head, if maths is not your subject, I don't know if it will ever be. So why not make it fun and engaging and more on a level for children? So that's in my alternate universe. If you want to come, I'll like make a sign up sheet for alternate universe time. Sign up your kids. We'll go looking for ladybirds and I'll race them at playtime. That's
okay.
fun.
I think you're going to be oversubscribed potentially, but
Hopefully.
sure. So moving on to the future, what's your 5-year plan? No, I'm joking. So
Married,
I hate
5
that
dogs.
question.
Joke.
5. Okay. Wow.
That was a joke.
What's your dream job? What job are you looking for next? Because you're currently job hunting, and I know you have some kind of specific kind of roles and settings in mind. And you never know, someone who's listening to this podcast might be able to hook you up. Know someone that knows someone. I don't know. You never know. It's who you know.
Do I
literally
need to just spiel my CV right here and now?
Yeah, absolutely. Qualifications, experience, the works. But yeah, it'd be good because I feel like also like potentially listeners of this podcast might be academics and researchers, not just people with lived experience. So there's people from all walks of life, is what I'm saying, listening, hopefully, who might know. I don't know. I know you kind of look at, what is it, the TES?
TES has good jobs. Times Educational Supplement.
Oh, okay. And that's where most of the teacher jobs are advertised or something?
Yeah, pretty much. And a lot of schools say that they only advertise on like the TES. So that's where I kind of focus my looking for different things. I've had a look at lots of different avenues I'd like to go down. I would like to go and work in an ASD base at some point. I'm not sure.
At a mainstream or?
I think I'd love to go and work in like an independent, like its own ASD school, because I think sometimes like ASD bases or units can get a little bit sidelined in a mainstream school. I wouldn't mind doing that though. I think it's not for me right now. I think after the last job, I'm looking for something like a little bit different. It was quite a challenging and physical, and I think, and I had to be very, very like attentive at 24/7. I think I'm just looking for something maybe just a little bit different to that right now. But one thing I've been really interested over like the last couple of years is working in a hospital school. So that's a teacher that like a hospital that has like a school unit as part of the building, and children who are there for a long stay or their siblings go down to the classroom every day, or you can go and teach on the wards, like at children's bedsides. I'm just really interested in that. I think it's another way of kind of working with children with lots of different needs. I think, again, it takes the part that I loved about the last job. It's very child mental health first. Learning kind of comes after that. Like I just really like building relationships with children, and once you've kind of got that relationship and you kind of know they're on like a good wavelength, that's when you have a good lesson, because you've had a bit of humor. They kind of think, oh, do you know what, I don't mind this person, and you can have like a really good kind of lesson after that, rather than kind of going in, right, today's lesson is, do you know what I mean? That's kind of what I say when I keep saying I like the child mental health side first and then lesson second. That's kind of what I mean. So yeah, I think that's just more suited to me. And I think also lessons have to be really creative and engaging when you're teaching children who can be quite unwell, or their siblings. And I just think those are the lessons I love to create. I love to do like fun games, creative arts. And I also
I guess it's kind of like short and sharp learning, isn't it? Because if they're not feeling well, they're not going to be able to learn for as long, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's also the kind of thing where you've got to cater to their needs, like even their interests. I love doing that, and you can't do that for a class of 30. You can't find out what they're all interested in and do a piece of writing on all their individual interests like amazingly. So yeah, I think I also quite like the idea that it's kind of something different every day. I think my last school was very tough because it was the same children with extreme needs every single day. And like he stayed with them for lunchtimes and things like that, and it was really full on. So I think I'm looking for something just very, very different, but not a mainstream school. And I'm still just looking to gain as much experience as I can. So that's the plan. Hospital school. If anyone is listening that owns a hospital school and needs
Owns.
just an outstanding teacher, that'd be me.
Absolutely blowing your own trumpet there. Love it.
Absolutely trying to sell myself.
Yeah. I think like when you first mentioned this kind of like concept and the different kind of setting, like I definitely get how it would be interesting, but I do also feel like I had like one main question in my head, and I feel like maybe some listeners might as well, in that wouldn't it be difficult if a child is very unwell, or you have to adapt to, you know, children moving on, or unfortunately, you know, being so ill that it's kind of an end of life situation? Like, how do you think how do you think you would manage that? Because, okay, yes, it's a less physical role in terms of the kind of level of like restraining and things you were doing, but it's almost physical in a more emotional way.
Yeah. I think that's a good question. I think I learned so much from my last job, and I wasn't ready for a lot of it. Like I couldn't have been ready, but I just learned so much. And I think that's something else that I'm like looking for, is to again learn a completely different thing. I think also that working in this school I've just worked in, and having children with such extreme trauma, like I have heard and have children with some just really, really like upsetting kind of backstories and things. So I think emotionally that has prepared me more than it did in a mainstream school for, and there have been circumstances in the last school where things have happened and you think like, oh no, like I wish that hadn't happened for that child, you know, like. So I think it would be another challenge, but it's not something that like puts me off. It's not something that I'd worry about. And it's almost the kind of thing like with this last school I've been in, I feel like I've made a good impact on their life, even though I was there for however long, or I only taught them for a certain amount of time. Like I feel like I've done what I could do, and I've kind of had a laugh with them, done some teaching with them, and they'll
Yeah,
move on.
and you
And if
remember the good teachers, don't you?
yeah, and I'd like to think I'm kind of that. And I think in a hospital school, again, I just want to I don't know, just try and be something that kind of helps hard times, maybe even for some people. I think another thing I was thinking about with this hospital school is when I was unwell in my GCSE year, I had a hospital tutor come and she tutored me. Slightly strange lady, but I feel like if I was that for somebody else, you know, like I was out of school for a year, and I think if I had someone that was really kind of like jokey with me, light-hearted, wants to get to know me, wants to make lessons like more interested in me, like I really think
Yeah.
that can make such a difference in someone, you know. And I'd love to just,
Also, for
yeah,
them to look forward to you coming. Like,
yeah. And I
imagine that.
think
Like,
that's what I like. Those are the bits I love about teaching. You turn up, you do like a really fun lesson, you have a bit of humor, and I just think I'd love to be that for someone else. Like it was the part I loved about my last job, and I feel like, yeah, there'll probably be some really difficult days in a hospital school if I ever were to get a job in that. But again, I think as much as the last job was challenging in other aspects, this could be challenging in others, but I'd learned so much from it. Yeah.
and also I feel like it was taking a toll on your mental health and your just well-being in general. I don't know if it's worth kind of talking about that a little bit, and that actually it was a decision to move jobs because it would, you know, you want to further your career obviously, but also it was a healthy choice in that you had done so long somewhere and you felt that actually stepping into a different role would actually benefit you more.
Yeah, and I think kind of what I felt sad about is that like I loved the idea of the school. I loved it the first year I did it. It really worked. But the second year it just wasn't working for different reasons. Different things had changed. It was a really intense job. It became really, really intense, more intense than it was. And I was just finding like it wasn't the the children or anything like that, but just the kind of expectations, the demands on teachers. I was just finding I was getting home and absolutely exhausted. I could not do anything for the rest of the evening. I was finding I was spending weekends asleep. And I think I just realized at that point, like, as much as you love this job, is this job serving you anymore? Because it's actually like, it was just turning me into like this like dead person. I just had no energy. I didn't want to socialize with people. And I suddenly started to realize like it was really zapping me of my energy. And as much as you love it, you can't continue in something that's like going to drain you out. And I think especially by the end of the term, I've never been, I didn't think I was getting burnt out at all. And then the last week of term, I just got so ill. I was just so tired. And as much as teachers have lovely holidays, it's some, and it sounds really ungrateful because I'm so grateful for the holidays, but the holidays just weren't enough in that job. It was such a tough job. And so yeah, I just urge anyone that's absolutely zapped from their job that it's not the be all and end all. And I think as much as like I love that job and I feel like to an extent they valued me, that they'll replace you, you know, there'll be someone else. And like especially with those kids, there'll be someone else that they absolutely love as well.
Yeah,
Like you can't stay for that. And
yeah,
yeah, I think
exactly.
like not even like I wasn't kind of down because of the job. I was just more down because I was just exhausted and just needed to get my social life back. I've also realised since stopping that my skin's really improved.
Oh, I'm happy
Got
for
a
you.
bit of energy. I'm sleeping well. Yeah, it was a tough job.
Absolutely glowing up.
I don't think any teacher could do it for too long, but it was a rewarding job.
It sounds a lot like it's obviously it's never the children that are like, they're not the issue, they're not the kind of thing that is the biggest struggle. It's the setting in which you are working with them in, and the structure in terms of the staff and like leadership and things like that. And when that changes, how much the actual education and the well-being changes as a result. Like, you think it would, like you're saying, like how important it would be to be like child-centered, but it sounds like, I don't know, 80% of the time it's more the environment that's letting them down, or the staffing issues, or like it's everything around them.
Yeah, and that's the
I don't know
thing
if that
is
makes sense.
that like the behaviours were really extreme in the last year that I worked there, but it's not by the children's fault at all. It's because they've been put into a hold on. I went from being in a class with 3 other kids to being in a class with 7 others, and now my teacher's maybe sitting with me a little bit less, and I don't like that child because I had a fight with him in football last year. Like it's just like the children were tougher, but it was not by their doing at all. It was more than management. And I understand management is a hard job in a school, but I think there comes a point when you need to think about the safety and also like how the children getting on, like how it's more unsettled, but also how your teachers getting on. You know, it's a tough job. You've got to look out for everyone. I think schools are becoming very either like money led or very like assessment led, and it's just I
get
see
that it's
why
hard.
teachers are leaving. Like
it's hard for them not to fall into that trap, but when they are so constrained by, like you said, money and Ofsted grades and grades of their pupils and things like. But yeah, you're right. It should just be like, actually, the past few weeks, things have been way more unsettled. Why is this? Let's drill down as to the source of this kind of thing.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, yeah. And I was just trying to find then like the statistic. Like the statistics are mad of like teachers leaving.
Oh, really?
I was just trying to find it. I can't remember what it was. It was something like 2 in 5 teachers leave after the first 3 years of teaching or something like that.
Really?
So is something that
like UK?
Yeah. And I just don't think it's like in so many different schools, there's so many pressures, and I just think it's a big job. And something I wrote about in my dissertation was how, like, especially in this job, I was coming in, I was being a teacher, a therapist. I was like the medical person. I was also like their trusted adult to come to tell them anything really important. Like I was just covering loads of different jobs
Yeah.
for that child, which
Whilst not focusing on any one of them.
And also just not even having the right training behind me to be that therapeutic person for that child, you know? Like I'm really trying to be therapeutic in my approach, but I'm not a therapist.
No.
And I'm not sure how to deal with this behavior, but I'm going to deal with it in the way I can. And yeah.
So we have been chatting for over an hour and it's gone very quickly. Ooh. And I feel like a lot of guests come on, they obviously are, not to put you down, but they're promoting stuff. They're promoting books. They're promoting, I don't know, TVs, stuff, film stuff, art stuff.
Mm-hmm. I can resonate, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got an album coming out in June.
Yeah.
And greatest hits.
You do have one resource that you can plug.
Yeah, I've got some teaching resources on the TES. You know, I love the TES, TES.
TES.
So if there were any teachers out there looking for different resources, there's things for like different lessons, homeworks and things, then I have got a little teacher shop, I think it's called, on the TES website, some free downloads, all very cheap resources.
Nice.
Yeah, that is my plug.
Amazing. I will make sure to link that down in the show notes for anyone that is interested.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much for coming on and for chatting in what feels like an extraordinarily formal way rather than a FaceTime.
It does. Thank you for having me. And I guess I'll see you around podcast 160. Hope you have a good Christmas. Hope the family is well.
160? Can you imagine? That is so far in the future.
Just another 80 more.